Throughout high school, people are going to talk about your transcript, and I thought I'd take a moment to explain to you what that is. Basically, I consider your transcript to be the ultimate report card. It's one sheet of paper that contains all of the important academic information about you from all 4 years of high school. It's especially important when you're applying to college. Colleges will request official transcripts from our school, and they'll be sent out with a seal in the lower right corner, like the one you see here. You can also get an unofficial transcript, which is available to you or for less serious occasions. You may also need them for scholarship applications, various other activities, but generally you won't need them until relatively late in your high school career. Why I'm talking about it now is because I think it's important for you to know what you're up against from the beginning so that you can strategize and make sure that you're not going to get caught off guard 3 years from now when you realize that you should have taken classes more seriously because you didn't realize they would matter so much. Basically, I worry that people don't know what these look like until it's too late. So that's why I'm doing this. The first thing that you need to know is across the top, there's demographic information in two separate boxes. On the left-hand side is information about the student, their name, grade, birthday, gender, address, and parent or guardian information. You'll see that I've redacted information here, but just so you know, I did speak to the student in question and got his permission to share this just without his name. In the upper right corner, you see information about our school. Pretty basic, but below that, you'll see some interesting stats. First of all, you'll find out that the enrollment of our school last year was 1,533 students, and that 50% of the students who graduate from Carlisle High School go on to attend four-year institutions, and another 21% attend 1, 2, or 3-year institutions. That's interesting because colleges take that into account. The stronger your school is, the more highly it's regarded by colleges in the application process. Most importantly, down the left-hand side, you'll see grades. It's important to note that you'll only see 3 years worth of grades for this kid who just graduated. This transcript was printed during their senior year. Now, if they got a transcript, it would have 4 years worth of grades. But when you apply to college, you will be doing so relatively early in your senior year. So colleges will see these grades from your first 3 years most prominently, and any grades from your senior year will be attached in the form of a report card. But that's why I always tell people that freshman year isn't really a quarter of the story when you're applying to college. It's more like a third of the story. You'll notice each of the 3 years of high school is broken down with all of the courses the student took. It also lists whether those classes were upper level, honors, or AP classes. So that is something that colleges see about you. You'll also see that the final average is what's reported here. They don't see every single individual marking period grade. So could you have a rough marking period that gets brought up by the others? Sure. It'll have some other implications that we'll get to in a moment, but they only see the final year-end average out of 100 points. It's also important to know that that average is determined by taking your 4 marking period averages and averaging those together. It does not take into account whether or not you had more points available in one marking period than another. So if you have a giant project in the second marking period of U.S. history, you know what I'm talking about. It doesn't get any additional weight. If the fourth marking period is very light on points and assignments, it's just as important as that second marking period because they all get averaged together. You'll also see reference to credit, and the vast majority of our classes are worth 1 credit apiece. But there are some classes that are worth other amounts. Freshman health is worth 0.6 credits, and PE is 0.25 credits. There are some other exceptions, but we'll get to that. I also want to mention that PE at 0.25 credits means that it is excluded from your GPA. And I will talk about that in a moment as well. So you might argue that PE doesn't count, quote unquote, but it does because colleges can see your average. And if you're rocking scores all in the 90s, but you have a 67 in PE, they're going to see that. And it reflects on your follow through and character. Next, you'll see that it notes CASD's grading scale, which is relatively unique. Most high schools in America use a 10-point grading scale, where 90 to 100 is a form of an A, 80 to 90 is a form of a B, etc. But we don't use that grading scale. It's very beneficial that we have report cards that are issued with our final average here, because colleges will see a 91 in your final average and their head will just automatically go to an A minus, even though at our school it's a B plus. So it is useful for them to know how that converts. And it doesn't really hurt you that that we have an 8-point grading scale as opposed to a 10-point grading scale. Next up, you see cumulative grade summary, which is where your GPA is listed. We'll talk about GPA in a separate video, but you'll note that there are 2 separate GPAs listed for every student. One is their regular GPA and one is a weighted GPA. Regular GPAs are out of a possible 4.0. So if you have an A in every class you ever got, then you have a perfect 4.0. But there's also a weighted GPA, which can go above 4.0 because you get an extra 0.5 in honors and AP classes. So you'll have 2 separate GPAs listed and therefore 2 separate class ranks. Your class rank is how you compare to the other people in your grade. So this student in question got a class rank of 77 out of 339 and a weighted rank of 70th. They're usually pretty close, but there are reasons why there can be some exceptions if you're like a really, really poor student who takes a lot of very difficult classes or vice versa. It's also important to note that it is our weighted class rank that determines valedictorian at the end of senior year. The person with the highest weighted GPA is the valedictorian. You'll also see your standardized testing information. This has your SAT scores and your ACT scores, as well as Keystone scores and SAT subject tests, if you choose to disclose them. You do not necessarily have to have all of these things appear on your transcript. There are plenty of colleges that are what we call test optional, and they don't have to see your test scores. So you have the option when requesting a transcript to either include or omit this information. It is your choice entirely there. So this is the overview of a transcript, and I hope that knowing what you're up against will be really helpful to you as you try to make the best impression through your whole high school career and really take your academics seriously.